right. Hey, community, laser community, welcome back to Livestream in the Laser Lounge. We've got a special guest with us today, and we'll get to our introductions in a second. But I just wanted to welcome May Armstrong. Here we are back again on the Monday lunchtime, and our special guest today is Jason Dorie. So appreciate all of you that are out there. I know we had quite a few said they were going to come today, so we're looking forward to this. I know May and I have been looking to get some time with you, Jason, for 6 months now. So we're glad we could work it out. Yeah.
Hello.
So
good to be here.
Good morning. Awesome. Welcome. So what I'd like to do today is I've got a kind of a short agenda that's going to lead us in kind of our time today. And so just want to show you. Let's do kind of an introduction and an icebreaker before we get going. So, Jason, first thing, what do you like to do on your weekends? Like if you had your ideal weekend that you could go do anything you want, what does a typical weekend look like with you at your household?
Typical weekend would be snowboarding, mountain biking, going for a hike somewhere, something like that. I tend to like to do makey things as well as physical things and try to mix it up. And so since starting Lightburn, a lot of the makey things are kind of related to the company stuff. So my girlfriend and I, or friends of mine and I, will go like snowboarding or mountain biking or hiking or that kind of thing. Take the dog for a walk in the neighborhood through we've got a couple of bird sanctuaries around here that are kind of fun for the dog. That kind of thing.
Awesome. That's nice. Outdoors type person. What about you, May?
Well, I stay pretty busy with the 3 active boys. And so lately our favorite is going to all the tournaments. It always happens on our, long weekends. And so weekend trips, going somewhere, spending, a couple of nights here and there, watching them play is like our biggest joy right now. And like what Jason said, I like to make things. And that's when creativity sometimes, happen on the weekend. And I don't know why. It's purely accidental. I think during the week, you're so focused doing, A, B, and C. And it's just like, it's hard to focus. But I don't know, weekend, especially Friday, Saturday, it's kind of like my go-to creativity moment when I get some inspiration going. So spending time with my family, doing whatever the heck they want.
Very nice. Good answers. Yeah, I think I'd agree with y'all. I'm an outdoorsy person too. And also with the making, I guess it's in our blood, right? If I had time, I'd probably go do something with James, get around, go see him, maybe some wineries around the area. But I also that's when we get our creative moment, right? You just go in your shop and start making things. So awesome. So nice little icebreaker. I just kind of wanted to get that out there. We have fun with those in the early part, these live streams, and I thought we'd bring it back. So Jason, welcome to the Laser Lounge live stream. Tell us a little bit about yourself more before we get into your work history.
A little bit about myself. I'm 52 now, I think. So I'm probably older than most people think I am. I have a lot of lasers. We just talked about that before the stream started, actually.
Yeah. How many lasers do you have?
Oh gosh, I counted in my shop here, in the office behind me or around me are about 9, and then on the shop floor are, I don't know, easily that many more, and then some if you're including diode lasers. I've been making for a long time. I've been a software engineer pretty much my whole life, and more recently, probably around my 30s, mid 30s. Started building stuff, working on digital electronics, drones. I flew model airplanes for a while, model helicopters. And when drones started becoming a thing, so this would have been like 2005-ish, I was like, those are cool. I have to figure out how to make those. How do I make those? And so made a CNC machine, found some plans online, started there, and then started building things like furniture with it and little random hobby parts, and got into digital electronics, started making my own drones, flight controllers, stuff like that. So I will go into all kinds of random directions while I'm nerding out.
But you're a maker at heart, so that's what got you going.
So what was your first machine, to help you make things, like to get you in that mindset and maker going?
A CNC machine.
CNC.
So it had a roto zip, which is basically a Dremel, but a little bigger, mounted to rails made of plumber pipe, roller skate bearings, 2x4, 2x6.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
it was plans that I got online for like $50. It actually worked surprisingly well. It had a bunch of parts that were like aluminum that you just bent into the right shapes and stuff like that. And it felt janky as heck, but it actually worked really well. And I made the cheap one and the small one first because I was like, I have a bad habit of collecting hobbies and then not actually doing them. So, I'd go out and, oh, this is a cool thing. I'll buy that. I'll make that. And then I'd ignore it. And so I bought the cheap one thinking if I like it, I'll use that to help me make another one. If I don't like it, then, I'm not out much. Ended up liking it and used it to help build a big one that was serious, like steel welded frame, 4 foot by 5 foot cutting area. I made like coffee tables and things with it. And
so really in the woodworking industry side of the house, just making furniture and things like that?
It was all kinds of random stuff. Like I made a self-balancing skateboard and I used the CNC machine to cut out the deck for it. Made a bed cabinet, like a cabinet for the foot of our bed, but with a TV lift in it. So you hit the button on the remote and the TV rises up out of the cabinet. I made a dog bed. I made a coffee table. I made fan blades for our ceiling fan, stuff like that. But I also used to make like electronics parts, drone parts, stuff like that. So
you remind me of, a new thing now is called Tinker Crate. And so it reminds me of, kind of like your evolution as a tinkerer. Mm-hmm. You're a serious tinkerer, and I'm really loving your backstory.
Absolutely.
It's been fun. So
great. So let's talk a little bit before Lightburn, like, very high level what you're doing. I was looking through your LinkedIn, and one of the things that drew my attention is you've done a lot in the gaming industry. So a lot of development, etc. So just at a high level, hit kind of what you did prior to Lightburn.
So I started in video games in, I want to say September, October of 1993. So it's been a while. And I worked as a developer on originally starting on the Sega Genesis, and then like everything from there forward. So the original Xbox and PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, like, so on and so on and so on, all the Nintendo platforms like GameCube and Dolphin, and as well as PC titles. Primarily in video games, I was doing rendering engines as well as tool pipelines. So if you have an Xbox or a PlayStation, you need a way to get graphics and stuff that artists create to make the characters and the backgrounds and all of that into the game. They don't use like PNGs and JPEGs. They use whatever the hardware is looking for. And so data pipelines are, here's a texture that I made in Photoshop, converted into something that I can use on an Xbox or a PlayStation, or here's a model I made in 3D Studio or some other 3D modeling package, get it into a format that runs fast on this console. And so I did a lot of that. And because of that, I worked with a lot of artists. So even though I'm very technical and engineering minded myself, I've been exposed to and worked with a lot of very creative types, very artistic types, people who, were fantastic at what they did, but not necessarily super technical. And I think that honestly helped a lot when I started working on Lightburn, because it was the same kind of thing. You have people who are very creative, but not necessarily very technical, and you're trying to help them, take their vision out of their head and into a machine. So,
I think that's powerful to be able to understand both sides of it.
Yeah.
Because, to be able to bridge that and say, well, how would an artist use this application as opposed to an engineer, and how it needs to be coded? So I think that's a strong plus on your behalf.
It helps. And I find a lot of software written by engineers is not organized well or not organized intuitively. You'll see a lot of things made by people who have technical backgrounds that are very functional, and they do
Yeah.
what they're supposed to, but they can be cumbersome to use and they don't have a good flow or feel to them. And that's a really hard thing sometimes to quantify. So
I think your sense of style is very evident with, you know, like what you've created, because you've taken the complicated and made it easy to understand and digest. And I feel like, and you know, as much as, you know, design world is complicated, and then you introduce the world of laser and being able to communicate and transfer that data and have the output that you want, I think you've bridged something beautiful, and that's why you're so popular.
thank you. We try. I am still an engineer, so there are times where I definitely fail. But my girlfriend is a graphic designer. So
Okay.
I
she's got
remember
she's
you
got
saying
a
that.
yeah, she's got a degree in graphic design. She made the dragon logo. She set up the initial
Oh,
website,
nice.
did a lot of like our packaging and our branding and that kind of thing. So she's sort of the go-to for anything visual, and she gives me feedback a lot, and that helps too. So, you know, if I have a question or I'm like, I don't know if this feels right, I'll get her to look at it, or some of the other creative people that are, you know, on our team. And now, but originally there was no team. It was just me and her and, you know, a couple of ragtag volunteers helping out with some documentation or testing or things like that.
So that's a great segue into the next section, is actually Lightburn. So from research, it looks like you started around 2019. How did it come about? Were you just like, hey, I'm going to make this, or, you know, just kind of tell us a little bit of the evolution of it, if you don't mind.
So I mentioned that I was working in games. I got offered a job at Apple, and we moved from an area that had a high cost of living to an area that had an exorbitantly high cost of living. And so we had to downsize. And so we went from a house with a garage to a condo with like a 1-car garage. And that CNC
So probably
machine that I
triple the
made,
price of the house.
just about, yeah. So the CNC machine that I built, I didn't have room for. So I rehomed it with a friend of mine. He found out that I was moving, and he was like, hey, if you need a place for that. So I gave it to him. And when I moved, I bought a laser cutter because it was physically smaller and didn't need dust collection and all of the other stuff that goes with a CNC machine. And I thought I could use it and still make stuff. And the software that it came with was RDWorks. And I used it and it worked, but kind of like I mentioned, it was clunky and cumbersome. And there were a bunch of things that it didn't have that it should have. Like you could only undo, a few, like I think 10 levels deep. You couldn't group more than one level deep. There were a lot of hotkeys missing. Like there was no hotkey for import. It didn't support drag and drop. It felt cumbersome. And I was okay with it. Tried to show my girlfriend how to use it, and she was just like, what the heck is this? I hate this. I never want to touch this again. And so that sort of gave me the bug to just like, I wonder how hard would it actually be to talk to this machine and have it accept something from me instead of from its own software. And I just started pulling at threads, and here we are. So yeah, there was a while where it was just a thing for me and for her. And I was posting updates about it on Facebook, a couple of the groups that I was in for, people who are interested in laser stuff. And, there were people online who were like, that's kind of cool. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to sell it? Are you going to open source that? Is that, and the more that happened, the more it was like, I might actually have something here. And I still didn't know at that time if I was even going to be able to get the machine to accept a job from me.
Right.
Like I started with RD files. So the file that you send to the laser, you can just save it on disk. And so I wrote a little tool to open it and kind of, poke through it, and figured out sort of where the stuff was, and just started like, with rearranging the cuts in a different order, and then gave that to the machine and ran it, and that worked. I was like, okay, so that's a start. And just kept going from there.
That's cool. I guess I got my first machine, the mirror, it was about 4 years ago. I didn't even open RDWorks. It was like no questions asked. Everybody went straight to Lightburn. It's not, I mean,
Yeah.
even now, it's like, that's the go-to. So,
Well, I remember when I started with my laser journey, I was gifted a Glowforge, and obviously that was totally different because it's, cloud based, and all I needed to do was just import my Illustrator files, and I was done.
Yeah.
did you lose her mic?
I think she did.
Yeah.
I thought it was me for a second.
Yeah, I can't hear her. Mike, May, your
May.
mic went out. She was
Oh, my
talking
mic
about
went
the
out. Can you
wonderful
hear
mic.
me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
now.
we got you back
Okay,
now.
sorry. I must have hit it. I was.
Yeah,
These
when
are.
you're talking.
I have the same mic, and there's a little mute button on.
Yes,
If you bump.
I know.
Yeah, that's what she
No,
did.
sorry
I've done
about
that.
that. Anyway, no. So
I also
going
talk with my
back
hands.
about first lasers, I had the Glowforge. I don't know where I stopped, but I just remember it was cloud based, and I would import my files from creating a PDF and importing it to the web based software. It was kind of like annoying to do, and sometimes there would be some I don't know, downtime, and something would happen. I remember it was not user friendly for me because I want instantaneous result. I'm very
Yeah.
impatient when it comes to stuff like that. And then I tried Lightburn with my new laser after Glowforge, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so awesome, so much easier to import things. And I just discovered that you can copy and paste from Illustrator, which was kind of like mind blowing. And I'm like, that is such a time-saving tool because now I can create my outlines in Illustrator and paste it in Lightburn. And
Yeah,
it's just
that one was a happy accident, believe it or not. Illustrator puts information onto the clipboard in SVG format. And because we import SVGs, if you paste in Lightburn, it looks to see what it is that you're trying to paste. And if it recognizes the format, so like if you copy from Notepad, just a chunk of text, you can paste the text into Lightburn and it'll just land as text. And if you have a PNG file or something or if you're looking on Google image search and you see something there, you can right click it and say, copy the image, and you can paste it into Lightburn because it will recognize the format as, oh, this is an image. And oddly enough, like when you import an SVG file, it just looks at what's the format and it sees, oh, that's an SVG. But if you paste from Illustrator, it's the same. And so we barely had to do anything at all to make that work. It was crazy.
it was
really surprised.
Brilliant. I use it all the time. I feel like it saves, it will save me a bunch of renditions of the file because then I can tweak it to my liking because 90% of my work will come out, through Lightburn and then laser it, right? And so to me, that's a big saving. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. And it looks like some of our users or some of our listeners here, that's kind of a new one for them. So great little point to add there. So how did you go from you and your girlfriend kind of playing around with this and something is starting to happen to, okay, this is a real business and we need to start hiring people and kind of ramping this up? What did that look like?
That happened pretty slowly. It was initially, like I said, myself and my girlfriend. As soon as we noticed people starting to pay attention, we kind of, went back and like, okay, well, how do we sell this to people? What do we need? Like, we need a website. We'd need, some way to actually sell it. We'd need license keys, some kind of a licensing system. I've tried to do software on the honor system before and it did not go well. So I just started, found the license provider that worked and would scale up. There were a bunch of license provider systems that wanted an initial buy-in of like thousands of dollars. And for something that I wasn't even sure we were going to be able to pull off, that was too much. So we found a company that had, are you familiar with Shopify? Because Shopify is a web platform for sales, and they have a very nice kind of tiered system where it's like, if you're new and not selling anything, they charge you almost nothing. And then as you grow, their pricing system grows with you. And the licensing system was very much like that. So it was, if you're, less than 100 licenses, it's free. If you're, between 100 and 1,000, it's this many dollars a month. If you're between 1,000 and 10,000, it's this many, and so on. And it grew with the business, and that was a big help. And so my girlfriend and I came up with a name just bouncing ideas back and forth. Originally, it was called J Laser because it was just the thing that I was
J-Laser.
working on for me, and it was stupid. So it needed a better name, and then after coming up with Lightburn, we were actually watching Game of Thrones, and there's a scene in Game of Thrones where one of the dragons flies over a row of like caravans and knights and so on, and just blasts the heck out of them with a big ball of fire. And while watching that, I commented, "Man, that thing's got a hell of a curve." And then we both sort of, wait, dragons. So that's how the dragon logo came to be. So
okay, that's awesome. I love the backstory like that.
Yeah, so that was fun. And then we basically went live. I want to say January of 2018 was the first sales, and it started as a trickle, and slowly grew over time. And then we got to the point where we had a bunch of like people who were helping writing documentation, beta testing, stuff like that, just kind of a volunteer community because we were very, very small. And when it got to the point where we were making enough money that, I was comfortable having a salary and having a buffer, I hired a guy to help with development as a contractor. And then, we got a little bigger, it went a little longer. And I asked him, like, I feel like I'm comfortable at this point enough that I could offer you full-time employment. I have no idea how to even do that. Like, I don't have a, proper accounting. I have no idea how to do payroll. I don't know how to do a 401k or, healthcare, any of that. I'll figure all that stuff out. Is this something you'd be interested in? And so that was our first hire. And it was like he and I kind of together figured some of those things out. And that was just before the start of the pandemic. So like I hired Adam, gosh, like maybe 6 months before the pandemic really got rolling, to a year, something like that. And, so he left a cushy corporate gig working for Red Hat to come work for me. And
Red
his time
Hat is here.
Is it?
Yeah. It's here in North Carolina.
Oh, that's right. You're in North Carolina. So is he.
Yeah.
So,
that's a good story. Go ahead, May.
I'm curious to know, obviously we didn't know that a pandemic would happen. And then here you are, about to start a company and hiring, thinking of hiring people. Were you like scared, or you thought, okay, there's a lot of promise here and I can see there's some growth. I'm going to stick to it and let's see how it's going to go.
The pandemic happened after we were up and running for a while. And when I hired Adam, it was, I'd have to actually check the dates, but I'm pretty sure like it predated the pandemic by at least a little bit, not a whole lot, but a bit. And it was when it happened, when it started to get really serious. Like we're in Connecticut, about an hour and a half outside of New York. And so for a while, New York was an epicenter. Like there were, refrigeration trucks outside of morgues because they didn't have enough room for bodies, things like that. Like it was terrible. And with that happening nearby, everybody was worried about it. A lot of people were freaking out, like what's going to happen with the laser industry. There were problems with shipping, global supply chains, manufacturing in China, because China was kind of where the center of the outbreak happened. And so a lot of China was on lockdown for a while. And it was like, are people going to be making lasers in 6 months? Like, if nobody's making lasers, I'm not selling software for them. That's kind of necessary. So yeah, it was scary. And we saw sales dip briefly for a little while, not horribly, but they were definitely on kind of a decline. And then something interesting happened. Everybody was at home, bored, in lockdown, looking for a new hobby. And right around that same time, I want to say Ortour was probably one of the first. They are a company that makes diode lasers. And they're not that expensive. Like, the kind of investment you put into something like a Thunder or an Aeon, that kind of thing, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars potentially. A diode laser, you can get a smallish one for $200 to $300. and we
Mhm.
sell a version of Lightburn for them that is also cheaper. And so those machines, they started to sell, and they started to sell fast, and people were buying Lightburn to go with them. So we actually saw our sales increase during the pandemic by a pretty big margin. Like, it jumped quite a bit. So my girlfriend and I were just like, okay, that's not expected, but I'm not going to argue with it. So let's just, head down and keep cranking away at this. And here we are. So
Yeah, it took off like crazy, and I can only imagine from your side of it as being one of the primary software applications that run the commands, that because we know how many people bought lasers in the industry and of our friends and how it's exploded. It's definitely wonderful growth for you and your company.
yeah.
So you were primarily doing the diode, then you start getting over to the CO2 gantry.
Oh, we
space.
started with CO2. So I started with
Okay.
a Ruida, and then the
Okay.
pandemic happened, and all of those diodes, kind of exploded. And we were also supporting diode lasers when we
Mhm.
started. So when Lightburn first released, it was primarily for Ruida users and for people who had G-code based machines, small hobby lasers. And one of the first companies to sell Lightburn with their hardware was Darkly Labs, and they make a little diode laser primarily for the education market. They're out of Australia. I sent them an early copy of Lightburn by email, just like, hey, I noticed you're using SmoothieWare for your machine. See if this works, because if it does, it would be cool. We could put a little checkbox, on our packaging that says it supports your machine. And, I got an email the next day. Can we call you? And the software that they were using, they weren't happy with, and they were curious to see if we could make Lightburn work for them. And so they were like very, very early on adopters of Lightburn. They helped us grow and get to the point where we are.
That's
Well,
awesome.
that's
I think
another
what's nice.
interesting story.
Yeah, it's a great story to hear. I think what's nice about your software is that you can either use it as a standalone, usage for the instructions for the laser, or you can design in it. And I think that's what is nice about it. May and I both primarily design in Adobe Illustrator, but we know so many people that they're just like, well, I'm in Lightburn. It does everything I need to do. So I don't need to go get another application, and it works for them. Right. And so I think the changes that you're putting in that are more from a designer aspect are beneficial to that community that's primarily just using it for their main design software and their laser controller.
Yeah, it was never intended to be that. It was originally modeled after RDWorks. RDWorks does not have great design facility, but it's meant as laser control software, and it was primarily targeted at industry, not users. And so when we started Lightburn, that was the focus. We wanted to make something that was very, very similar to RDWorks in terms of functionality, so that, functionality and layout, so that people from that software could migrate easily and wouldn't have a huge learning curve ahead. And then more and more people in the diode space were using it. And those people often can't afford something as expensive as Adobe. If it's not a business, you're either working with Inkscape or other freeware packages or things like that, something cheaper. And now we have Affinity Designer and things like that, which are good, but we didn't at the time. And so we started adding more of the design features in Lightburn. And I'm honestly surprised at how much more of that has happened, because it wasn't intended. It was just, people started asking, well, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you bend text? Can I, do these other things? And so we're like, okay, if that's what people want, we'll do it.
So a couple of questions I want to make sure I hit on, and then sorry, May.
Sure.
No, there was one here that I think Jason mentioned it before, but I don't know if they're referring to CO2 or something else. They're just wondering what kind of laser did you have first, like what brand. They're interested about the brand.
I think it was an OM Tech. It was at the time called Kehui, Kehui. And it was the red and black, like 100-watt CO2 from eBay. So yeah, I bought a red and black off of eBay for like $2,500.
It matches the logo.
Yeah,
exactly. So we have the Lightburn software, and we were primarily, I guess, at first on a PC hardware, and then we start supporting Mac hardware, or what?
Yeah, I think it was PC and Mac first. And then we added support for Linux not too long after we got going. Lightburn is built on a platform framework called Qt or Qt. It's actually pronounced cute, but I could just not bring myself to say that. And Qt has support for, like it provides basically a common way that you talk to your operating system. So we build Lightburn in Qt and we say, you know, put a button here, put a widget there, put a drop down up here. And Qt is the thing that handles talking to the operating system to make that happen. So it takes some of the burden off of us. And because Qt also supports Linux, and there wasn't really anything for users in Linux at the time, we figured we'd give it a try. And Linux is sort of a best effort for us. It's not like, it's about 1.5% of our customer base. So it's pretty small. Mac is about 15% and Windows is the rest.
Really? Yeah. That surprises me. Maybe just because I have a siloed view. I'm a Mac person. So I assume everyone, not everyone, but
a lot of like Macs are more expensive than PCs. Like if you are a hobby user with a diode and you're budget conscious, buying a Mac can be kind of, you know, a little bit out of scope. And it also depends on where you are in the world. Like in the US, our dollar is stronger than, you know, people in Brazil, people in Spain, you know.
No, that's a good point to make. So let's talk about that. Then I call it fairly new, but I guess it's been almost a year now, right? No, it was 6 months. The Galvo
it's been about 6 months,
Yeah, because I can tell you from a user standpoint, May and I got our first fibers at the same time. And mine collected dust until that came out, because I just was like, I think I put EasyCAD on twice, and I'm like, this kind of blows. I'm not using this. I'm going to wait. And everyone was like, it's coming, it's coming. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that one was scary because, again, that was one of those I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull it off things. I had a fiber and had been kind of pulling at threads on that one for a while. My original hope was that we'd be able to use the driver that comes with EasyCAD and just go through their driver. And I couldn't make it work. Like I tried for over a year, you know, and not continuously, but every so often I would, you know, pick it back up and go pull at it again. And I got close, but I never got it to work. And so finally I just yanked their driver and was like, all right, to heck with this. I'll just put in my own driver to talk directly to the hardware. And it immediately started working and talking to me. And then it was a matter of, okay, now we have to figure out what all the controls are, get, you know, the computer talks to the machine in a language that is just binary. And so you have to capture all of this data and then go wading through it and try to figure out what it all means. And that's the fun bit.
Language. Yeah.
And so it's, you know, you start with draw a square. You know, that is exactly a known size. And then you change the size of the square and see what the commands, you know, come out as, see what changes. Change a power value somewhere, change a timing value somewhere, stuff like that, and start looking at like what's changing. So it took a while. And that's honestly why the fiber version is more expensive than the G-code version or the DSP version, because it was considerably harder to do.
It's worth it for me. You know, I hated EasyCAD. Like I hated it. I did immerse myself into it and kind of like learning, and you know, obviously watching Alex's video. He's very good at explaining things, and it was not sticking in my brain.
It's one of those things where I also look at, you know, what did the machine cost? If you buy a diode laser for $300, you know, charging you $100 for the software would be too much. If you buy a CO2 laser for $1,000, charging you $100 for the software, it's, you know, it's not so bad. And fibers tend to be about the same price point as the CO2 lasers, or a little higher depending on what you get. So I was comfortable charging the amount we do. But it's, you know, we try to be price conscious because we are competing with free, like EasyCAD comes with the machine, and you know, so it's free in that it's subsidized. It's part of the cost of the hardware. And RDWorks is similar. You know, there's always a free option available. So we can't, or I don't want to price ourselves too high. We want to make it accessible for people, but we also have to, pay for the
Pay the
work that we
bills.
do and pay
Yeah.
pay the developers.
I mean, I think it's 100% reasonable, and I'm super appreciative, especially getting used to Lightburn and doing what I need to do, and then now adding all the Galvo lasers that I have, and having the flexibility of just having all of them at the same format. I don't have to like jump from one thing to another. And I'm a Mac user. I don't have a PC. I do, but I don't really use it. So
You
it
don't
would
want
require,
it. Yeah.
No.
I mean, I really don't want to do it. And so to me, there's a disconnect when it comes to like performance, like my productivity too throughout the day. I'm not as efficient as a designer and as a production person, that does laser work. It's not as efficient to me, but having Lightburn for Galvo, it's like, thank you so much.
even before we had the Galvo version available, I heard that same sentiment from a couple of users that we have who have production companies. So there's a company in California that has a bunch of CO2 machines, and they run some on RDWorks and some on LaserCAD, which is the Troson controller software. And prior to Lightburn, they would have to train their operators on the eccentricities of whatever that software was for each machine. So they'd have design files, they'd load them into whichever machine they were trying to cut on. They'd have to set up the settings appropriately, and each of those machines has slightly different ways that they work. Lightburn makes those two machines behave basically the same. And so now they just have Lightburn files, and they just teach their operators how to use Lightburn, and they don't really have to know what the differences between the machines are too much, because they all basically work the same way under Lightburn. And so that helped them be more efficient with their staff. And that was even before, we had people running diode lasers and CO2 lasers and Galvo lasers all from the same thing. Like it's nice to be able to stay in the same interface and, have at least some of it be the same. Like there's enough difference with Galvos and CO2s and diodes. Like, the software has to behave differently. But you can keep a lot of it similar. So,
no, it's very, I mean, I like the similarities because I'm running 6 lasers in here, and it's nice to be able to know the same application, even though there's a little nuance with the Galvo. So in the laser groups, specifically on the Galvo side, when we're in some of these Facebook groups, people are I wouldn't say confused, but they don't know that right now with the software, the EasyCAD 2 and 3 boards are a little different with what's supported by the software. I have heard that you guys are going to start supporting EasyCAD 3 after some more beta testing, but I just wanted to clear that up just to get.
It's more. I don't know if we can support EasyCAD 3 at this point. So I've got a machine here behind me. That one, the Blue Thunder, that's an Aurora Pro. That is an EasyCAD 3 based machine. I've done some initial kind of poking at the communication between the PC and the laser. There's a bunch of numbers in there that I don't know what they mean. And if they did something like included a check or a checksum or a calculation or something that is like encryption, then we may not be able to support it. So I don't know. I'm not going to know until I actually get to the point where I start trying to talk to it. Right now, I'm still just kind of picking it apart. But it is possible for a company to prevent us from talking to their hardware, or make it difficult enough that it's not worth it.
Well, that's good to know, because we try to answer these questions sometimes for people, and at least we're going to be knowledgeable. I want to call this comment out. And a lot of people do feel this way. We're very appreciative to you and your team and then what y'all are doing, because it makes a big difference on our end as users of it, if it's a good piece of software or not. So appreciate all the work you've done here.
Thank you.
So as we're cruising along here, I'm gonna get us back to our agenda, because I want to call out a few things and share some things. So the development and deployment process. I know a lot of people that aren't used to software development or working for a company that makes software. They're not used to the iteration process and how these things work, right? And so they're like, well, something's broken. Why isn't it fixed tomorrow? Or when is this coming? Or how do I get, a new input to you guys to say, hey, it would be great if you had this feature. So just very high level, kind of give a summary, like how y'all do things, and when y'all plan to drop new releases? Is it based on bugs? Is it based on, okay, we've got a major feature coming? Just so the users know, this is kind of how it works behind the scenes.
So we don't have a rigid schedule. Software is a lot of unknowns, especially when you're working with hardware that's not like, we didn't make the hardware. I can't change the hardware. So I have to work within the constraints of the existing hardware and within what we have. Like, we've got a lot of existing users of Lightburn out there. If we change anything too drastically all at once, we're probably going to bother some of those people, or break someone's way of working, that kind of thing. So we try to be conscious of how we put new features in, how much we change at any given moment. And then it's a matter of, is it stable right now? If we are in the middle of, tearing out a whole bunch of the insides so that we can change something, like say you drive a Ford and you decide to put a Lamborghini engine in it. That's not a small process. You have to rip out the old engine, figure out how to mate all the parts together, put the new one in, mount it, get it all working. If somewhere along that process, your girlfriend decides she needs to take the car to go to the corner store, she's kind of screwed. And similar for us, if we are in the process of, tearing something out so that we can add new features or support something new that's coming, we can't just drop that and, fix a few bugs and do an instant release. So we will typically have a copy of the code called a branch, that is the last release that we did. And whatever's new and coming, we're working on in parallel with it. And if bugs show up that we can fix in the branch, we'll do them there. But if they're too big or, too impactful, maybe we might wait for the next release. So we actually have a 1.3.02 patch release coming very soon. I've basically been holding off just to make sure that there's not anything else left. And we found a couple of sort of niggling little bugs. But that'll probably come out fairly soon. And then the 1.4 release is one of those where, we've torn the engine out and we're replacing it. So we're going to be a little while yet with that one.
So what I want the viewers here that are seeing this live visually, if you go to the Lightburn main page here, there's the news and blog post. And this is where you can dig through and find the release notes. You can click on this stuff and it'll show you, what's in it, what was changed. And some of you that aren't from, the nerdy software world, I kind of am, so I kind of get it. It's often nice to go in here, and I've gone through here and found there's, oh man, I didn't know that there was that awesome feature they just rolled out that maybe isn't as public to you. I think when they did the center finder, which is probably my most used tool that's kind of cool, that's where I saw it, right? So you can go here on the page and see where that is. And I know there's some people that don't upgrade to some of the latest versions. They just stick with, what's working. I know sometimes there's a scare, like something will break. I always try to advise them, at least jump up to the newest main rev, right? Because there's some big features that have been done. If you don't want to stick with the smaller increments, I get that. But
the smaller increments are actually the more important ones. So if you have upgraded to say 1.2.00, and you haven't moved forward from that one, you should go to at least 1.2.04, for example, because the last number is a patch number. So when we do a release like 1.2, if somebody comes back and says, hey, this broke or this crashed or something, we will fix those and we'll update that as a patch release. So that would be 1.2.01 or 1.2.02 or whatever. Those are only fixes. And then the next jump to 1.3 is we've added a bunch of new features. We've changed a bunch of stuff that's bigger, and it's not just bug fixes. It's we added a hotkey editor. We added this. We added that. The big releases are probably more likely to have new crashes or new bugs. The patch releases, they really just fix stuff that was broken. So you should at least try to go forward to a patch. And we have every single release we've ever done is available on our website to download. So if you install a version and you hate it, you can always go back to the old one. Even if you don't keep it, you can find it on our website, download it, install it. And we try really hard to keep the file formats interoperable. So if we change something every once in a while we have to break something, but usually if you try to load a new file on an older version of Lightburn, it will actually work.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I appreciate that. Go ahead, May.
No, I have done that. I have, upgraded to the latest, but then there was something happened in between that, didn't translate. And so I had to go back to what I had before. And it's a nice resource that you could just, go to the website and it's there. Everything lives there, from the forums. I use that occasionally. I remember last year I had some sort of glitch with my fiber laser. I was engraving a cup and it was just rotating infinite rotation. And then on top of that, there was some sort of marching lines going across. And I remember copying and pasting something within the software, and I sent it to an email. I can't remember who I sent it to. It was a Lightburn
Probably support, yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like, oh my gosh, how can they read through all that? But I'm sure you guys have it figured out. And they said, I think it's just, because it was communicating with EasyCAD. It's an occasional glitch that happens. And so after that, I'm like, oh, well, let me just unplug everything and then install everything, and it fixed itself. So I don't know what happened there.
I think this is what I like to tell people, because in my day job, I'm in a digital transformation, and we are rolling out new software releases and updates. You have to be somewhat patient with it, right? So you're getting to use something that's making it better, but there will always be, I hate to use word always, but there may be something there that's like, okay, something funky happened, because they can't test every freaking scenario.
No, I mean,
they don't know how old my Mac is. Yeah,
software is hard to make perfect. Like it really is. It's extremely complicated. We've got hundreds of thousands of lines of code. We support, probably a dozen different types of machine at this point, and testing every possible combination of what computer you have, how you're connected to the machine, what the machine is, as well as what features you're using in combination with each other. Sometimes there's interplays with the features themselves that will cause problems. And so the best we can do is try to be very, very responsive with bugs. And we do. Like, we take bug reports seriously. If you have a crash and you send us a crash report, we look at it, we try to figure out what's wrong and get it fixed. And so that's what those patch releases are, is every time we fix something, we collect up a few fixes in a row and we release a patch. And we try really hard to take them seriously.
Yeah, I think that's the key takeaways for people, just to kind of be patient. And the more information they can probably provide you, it probably is helpful.
Yes. Saying it crashed, what did I do wrong? Doesn't help me.
Yes. I do appreciate, though, I don't know when it happened, but for whatever reason, I remember as a Mac user, there's always some sort of authentication issue there where I have to go in and approve everything and then give it some, I don't know, a few clicks, and then Lightburn works. So I don't know what you guys did, but I'm very grateful that there's zero issues now when it comes to Lightburn and Mac, and it's working amazing.
Apple changed the goalposts a couple times. Initially, it was you had to be an approved developer. So, we had to create a development account with Apple and get a digital signature set up and sign the software. That's not that hard, and it took us a little while to do. And as soon as we did it, then Apple decided, also now we need to take the application. You have to submit it to us. We do a scan to make sure that, you didn't break any specific rules. It doesn't contain malware, stuff like that. And so they call that notarization. And it took a while for us to get the Qt framework and Apple and everything that we're doing together with those to go through that process. So that's the second part that now made your life easier.
Yes,
so. I think that's great. And we have a comment in here, and I just wanted to show the users, there is a great forum that you have on your main page. It's a self-service portal to go through here, dig through. I had to use it this weekend for something. I think it was like the split line or something. I don't remember what it was, and you just go through here and search on some keywords, and you can probably figure out your answer. So nice call out by one of the users on our live stream here of how useful this is. And then I want to ask one more question. Someone put on here, they love the center finder feature. As I love it too. And someone asks here, how do you use it on the square rectangle piece? I'll just give my little tip, but you tell me what you tell me what you say, and then I'll tell you how I do it.
The circle finder works on squares or rectangles if you just pick 3 of the corners.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do.
The math just works out. If you draw a circle that touches the 4 corners of a rectangle, it just works. So like the circle finder doesn't know you're doing a rectangle, and the math just works anyway.
Correct. Awesome. So before we go to things to come and start close out, what is your favorite feature of the type of features like that you like? Okay, this one rocks, and I use it a lot, and it made a big difference. If you have one.
The Boolean tools are kind of my favorites. I feel like they're also among the least understood. But being able to, merge shapes, subtract one shape from another, like I use those a lot when I'm composing things together, like, rather than node editing. 2-point rotate. Somebody asked, is there a way to be able to pick a specific spot to pivot? Using the 2-point rotate tool, you can actually do that. So 2-point rotate is you pick an object and you choose a point to rotate it from, and you choose another point, and then you grab that second point and drag it, and it'll rotate around the first one until you match the second one. So you can use it to like take 2 things, grab one, move it up to the other, and then rotate it until they match. And it will also scale. So you can use it to scale match 2 things together. So it's a little bit like doing print and cut in Lightburn itself, like where you say, take this second piece of the design and rotate it and scale it to match the first piece. I use that one. I don't know. The bend text one was one that was fun. I love that one just because I made it, and I don't know, special place in my heart.
Well, that's awesome. So let's get to the what's to come for what you could share. We even have the first question on it. Someone's saying here, 3D printers.
3D printers is interesting. It's probably not one that we'll do anytime soon, just because there's a lot that already exists in that space, and we wouldn't do 3D modeling because that's kind of huge. So really, what's left is slicing, and there's already really great slicing software out there that's free. So there's not a huge amount of reason for us to try it. Where I want to go in the future is things like vinyl cutters, plasma cutters, water jet, and CNC. And I think like vinyl cutters, if you've got a silhouette machine, being able to run one of those, or a Graphtec or a Roland or something like that with Lightburn, using your Lightburn files, would be really cool. I've actually had a silhouette cutter working with Lightburn.
Stop it.
No, I have, believe it or not well and not polished enough to release. But we're actually going to do CNC machines first.
Hey, I'll beta test for the CNC one because I hate CNC.
That's so exciting. I would like a CNC machine, but I don't want to build one right now.
You can buy them. So like Xcarve, Shapeco, they make sort of smaller hobby scale CNC machines that are like kits.
If you order from them, you don't have to necessarily build it. They come already.
Yeah, mine is a Shapeco XXL, and you build it when it comes, but it's got software.
It's a kit. So you assemble it, but it's done for you. They've done all the engineering and everything else. And so those are kind of what we're targeting for the CNC version. So initially it's going to be probably not terribly competitive with what's out there already. Because, it's going to take us a while to sort of ramp up the feature set, but we'll price it accordingly. We'll be testing it, a bunch.
I'm excited to hear that. That'll be of interest to me because
me as well. That's where I started. So,
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, listen, I want to be respectful of your time. We're 55 minutes in, and I also want to give you some feedback. I really do appreciate what you do for the laser community, not only for developing the software, but you're in a lot of the groups and answering questions. You don't see a lot of, owners of companies in there, and it can be vulnerable to you, right? You could have someone say, hey, give you feedback you don't want to hear, but you're in there and you're, with the community. So I appreciate that.
I like the feedback, to be honest. And I think that's important for us, because if if I hang out in those groups a lot, I see a lot of the pain points that people have. I see the things that are frustrations. Hopefully I also see some of the good stuff where people are like, hey, I made this awesome, cool thing. And, that feedback is great for us too. When you're doing support, you get a really skewed worldview of the user base because all the people who are coming to you are the ones who are having problems. And I want to see, the success stories as well as the failures. But I really do think it's important for me to be at least conscious of, what things people are frustrated by, the things they're bumping up against, the friction points for them, so that we can try to alleviate some of those. And I also like to correct misinformation. So we see a lot of people will answer questions in Facebook groups from the hip. There's a lot of, I want to answer fast, not necessarily correct. And I try to correct that stuff as well. And it's hard to keep up with, but we do our best.
Well,
we love seeing your, when you're interacting with, the community and your honest opinion about things. We do value and see you as such a role model in the laser community. And so it's nice to also see you kind of like being active as well and humanize you. And that's why we're here interviewing you and seeing what Jason is all about. And so thank you so much for your amazing creation and continue developing and making our lives so much easier in the laser industry. And I know there's a lot more in there. And I know you have a lot of, dreams and aspirations you need to achieve. But I feel like you're just scratching the surface and you've created something great. So I'm really happy for you and your team. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jason. And we'll see you in the Facebook groups. And to the rest of the community, you can follow us online at Laser Lounge at Pate Ranch. And then May, give a plug out for your YouTube.
It's slowly growing. I am not as established as Alicia or maybe Jason as Lightburn. But yeah, May Designs. And Jason, where can we find you? I know we can find you in the forum for Lightburn, but anything else that we need to keep in mind?
Mostly I'm in every group that I can find, and we have the Lightburn forums are the only official place for interaction with us other than our support. So if you go to support@lightburnsoftware.com, that's the I need an answer. The forums are it would be nice to have an answer. So forums are community, and we try to keep up, but it's hard. So if you absolutely have a question or a problem that you need resolved, send us an email. And somebody asked, do we have a bunch of people helping us? And yes, we do. We absolutely do. We have people in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, at multiple time zones across the US. So like we have people who do contract support for us, so that we can sort of hit people wherever they are in the world and try to get questions answered quickly. So those are the two avenues that we recommend. And then, if I happen to see a question in a Facebook group, I'll answer it if I can, but I can't always. So
if they want to support you in other ways on top of buying your software, let's say they want to support your merchandise, where can they get that?
Oh, that's lightburnsoftware.com.
Okay, cool.
We actually have one. Oh, Jan, I'm not actually supposed to talk about this yet, but on the 3rd of March, we are going to be announcing a thing that we're doing, and people should keep an eye out for that. I think I almost jumped the gun there. So.
Okay, 3rd of March. There's your teaser. So I want to thank you for being on today. May and I had a great time talking to you. And as she said, it's great to get you know you. I think when we have people that have great companies, there's a lot to do with how they are as a person in their side, right? Like you're very creative, an artist, you're into animals and being outdoorsy. So it's nice to get to know you. And so thank you for coming on today. Thank you to our show sponsors, Thunder Laser USA and Rotoboss Rotary Attachments. And y'all have a wonderful last Monday of the month, right? We're about to start the 3rd month of the 1st quarter. So get out there and sell those products and get to doing. So y'all have a wonderful day and see you next time.